Okay, so for today's flow, let's come to our mats and we'll come onto our backs. So soles of the feet on the mat this time. And you can either have them hip width distance apart or wider with the knees together, whichever one feels more soothing. Head down, close the eyes, and don't change anything. With the eyes closed, just look inside, let your breath go the way it normally goes without thinking about it, and maybe just observe it. Maybe for those of you that are more advanced, you can't help but drop into your ujjayi breath, which is me. I definitely want, as soon as we get on our mats, I just want to go back to that breath. So take a deep inhale in through the nose and exhale out of the mouth. 2 more like that. Deep breath in. Exhale out of the mouth, release. Last one like that. Deep breath in, fill all the way up. Exhale back out through the mouth. This time in through the nose. Back out through the nose. Keep going on your own ujjayi breath. So your time on your mat is a time of observation of just yourself, looking inside your own mind, checking out how your body feels, seeing where the breath is. Our breath can tell us a lot about our state of emotions and energy. We're feeling tired or maybe over energized or maybe just right where we need to be. Start to stretch the arms overhead, getting long. Leave the feet on the mat wherever they are. Clasp opposite elbows. So just let the arms rest overhead. Everything's loose. Just getting a nice light opening of the upper body, maybe even the shoulders. And that might mean you don't quite reach the elbows. That's fine. Maybe it's closer to wrists or middle of the forearms. Finding your version of getting that light upper body opening. And you'll switch sides, reach the arms up overhead, cross opposite elbows the other way. And reach the arms back overhead, interlace the fingers underneath the head, and then heel toe the feet, if they're wider, back to hip width distance. On your inhale, stay right where you are, look up. On the exhale, just lift the upper body up and away from the mat. Inhale back. Exhale up. So you're just focusing on the upper body moving, hugging the core in. Inhale back. Exhale up. And as you go back and forth with this breath, keeping it slow and controlled, inhaling back and exhaling up, just noticing how this all feels. The legs are somewhat engaged as you lightly press down into the feet. The head's heavy so that the neck doesn't do any work. And that's where the hands come into play. They're holding the head, giving it the support it needs so the neck can relax. Next time you come up, stay up, bring the knees in toward the body, so toward the face. They won't touch anything. And then exhale or inhale, set it all back down, feet down, head down. And then exhale, bring it all back together, elbows wide, and inhale, set it all back down. So it feels like a bigger movement with these reverse crunches. Exhale, bring it all back in. And inhale, set it all back down. Feeling more of your core engaged. Exhale, curl in. Inhale back. Exhale, bring it back together. Inhale, set it down. 2 more. Exhale. Inhale back. Exhale, come back together. Inhale back, rest. Hug that right knee in toward the chest and cross the right ankle on top of the left thigh, coming in to thread the needle. So you can leave the left foot on the mat. You can bring the legs in closer, reach through, grab the back of the left thigh. See what's feeling gentle. We're not going for your deepest hip opening, just a nice, gentle, maybe a little bit more than gentle. And set the feet back down to the mat. Hug the left knee in toward the chest, and you'll cross the left ankle on top of the right thigh, keeping the left foot flexed, staying here, or bring the legs in closer, reach through, grab the back of the right thigh. Gently using the muscles in that left leg to press the left knee away from you, keeping that left foot flexed. And set the feet back down to the mat. Roll over to your right side. Use the left hand to bring yourself up to seated. And once you get to seated, come to an easy cross-legged seat, crossing the legs in front of you, hands to the knees. And on the inhale, arch the spine. So lift the heart up toward the sky. Maybe you keep the gaze up too. And on the exhale, round the spine, belly hugs in. Chin comes down toward the chest. So cat-cow, but seated. Inhale, lift the heart, maybe the gaze, and exhale, round. Keep going on your own, feeling the difference in your cat-cow when you're seated versus when you're doing it on hands and knees. Maybe it feels the same, but it's a different orientation. Sometimes we can observe more with what's happening in our bodies when we change something significant, like the shape of the legs. And one more cycle forward and back. Take your time with it. Don't feel like you have to rush. And you'll come back up to seated, come forward to hands and knees. So once you come forward to hands and knees, you'll walk the hands forward so that they're ahead of the shoulders. And let's step this left foot forward outside of the left hand, coming into a wide lunge. We'll keep the back knee down, chest is reaching forward. You're welcome to bring blocks underneath the hands if it feels like it's a little too much to bring the hands down to the mat. Let's try to keep the left toes pointing forward. And if you want to tuck the back toes and scoot that right knee back at all, if it will go back at all, you can do that. And bring that left knee back underneath the hip. Same thing, other side. So right foot comes forward outside of the right hand. Reach the heart forward. Maybe scoot that left knee back if there's any more room for it to go back. Trying to keep any rounding out of the upper back. Keep it long, straight. And right knee comes back underneath the hip. Keep the hands forward ahead of the shoulders. Stay on the knees. Just shift forward so that you stack the shoulders over the wrists and lie all the way down onto your stomach. Tops of the feet to the mat, hands back by the lower ribs. Let's take a baby cobra. It doesn't need to be a big one. On your inhale, hug those outer elbows in, shoulders away from the ears. And exhale, release. 2 more baby cobras. Each one can get a little bigger. Inhale up, but definitely not going into your biggest one. Exhale, release. Last one. Inhale up. Exhale, release. Child's pose. Come back to hands and knees, big toes together. As you pull the hips back, hands and arms reach forward. Forehead comes down to the mat. And let's thread the left arm through underneath the right arm. So lifting the head, you'll take this left arm, thread it through underneath you, bring the left side of the head down to the mat. And now we're just getting into the shoulders as we stay in our child's pose, keeping this L shape with the arms. Left arm comes back forward to your child's pose, switching sides. Right arm threads through underneath you. Set the right side of the head down onto the mat. Everything else stays in child's pose. Right hand comes forward, back to Balasana, child's pose. Tap the forehead down onto the mat again. Stay here for another inhale and exhale. Looking forward at the hands, shift forward onto the hands, tuck the toes, lift the hips, downward facing dog. First one, you have some time here. Find any movement that you typically like to do in your first downward facing dog, unless you're comfortable in stillness. Probably a bend in the knees if the legs are tight, or taking a wider stance with the feet. And just a quick spot check. Make sure those feet are at least hip width distance apart. You don't want them any closer than that, so that you keep enough space for the lower back in downward facing dog. Can always go wider, but not narrower. Then starting to find some stillness in your downward facing dog, hugging the belly in, hugging those lowest front ribs in, pulling the shoulders away from the ears. Start to bend the knees, look forward, step, walk, bring the feet up to the hands. Inhaling up halfway. Exhale, fold. Let's do that 2 more times. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. Last one, inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. This time, inhale, reach the arms all the way up overhead. Hands come together and down in front of the heart. Inhale, reaching the arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Come all the way down over the legs. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, bend the knees, bring the hands down to the mat, step back to plank pose. Hold your plank pose. Reach the chest forward, keep the shoulders stacked over the wrists, legs pulled back as the thighs lift. And we're trying to keep the heels stacked over the balls of the feet. Lower down halfway, chaturanga. Just pause here. Come all the way down onto your stomach. Cobra, tops of the feet down, hands back. Bhujangasana. Exhale, release. Tuck the toes, hands and knees, or back to plank pose. Down dog. Put a bend in the knees, look forward, step, walk, maybe lightly hop, feet up to the hands. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. Inhale, arms come all the way up overhead, hands come together at the top, down in front of the heart on the exhale. Inhale, reaching up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, bend the knees, hands to the mat, step back to plank pose. Lower down halfway, chaturanga, cobra or up dog, Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. Exhale back, down dog. Put a bend in the knees, look forward, lightly bring the feet up to the hands. Inhaling up halfway. Exhale, fold. Inhale all the way up to standing. Hands come together overhead, down in front of the heart. Inhale, reaching up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, bend the knees, hands to the mat, step back to plank pose, shift forward onto the toes, bend the elbows halfway, chaturanga, cobra or up dog. Down dog. One more, bend the knees, look forward, bring the feet up. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. Inhale all the way back up to standing. Hands come together overhead, down in front of the heart. Inhale, reaching up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, bend the knees, hands down to the mat, step back to plank pose. Lower down halfway, chaturanga. Inhale up for your back bend. And exhale back, downward facing dog. Few breaths here. From downward facing dog, walk the hands back toward the feet at the back of the mat. So you're in a forward fold, back of the mat. And then keeping the hands down in front of you, heel toe the feet as wide as you need to come into Malasana yogi squat. So you can use blocks underneath the hips. You can turn the heels in, toes out. Hips will start to come down. If the heels are lifted, just keep the hands down in front of you with a long spine. If you can get the heels to touch something, even if that means a rolled up mat or blanket, then you can bring the hands together, elbows in front of the knees, chest lifts, pelvic floor lifts. That helps you get a longer line up through the crown of the head. Chest is nice and open. Gaze is way out in front of you. Hands come back down to the mat, straighten the legs, heel toe the feet, back to hip width distance. Inhale up halfway, Ardha Uttanasana, reaching the heart forward. Then walk the hands forward, back to downward facing dog. Right leg lifts up and back. Step that right foot all the way through, up between the hands. Feet are hip width distance apart. Come up to crescent pose. Reach the arms forward and all the way up. You could put a little bend in the back knee if you want to find that space in the lower back, and then play with how straight you want that back leg, preserving that space. Take this to warrior two. Spin the left heel down flat, heel toe the right foot in a little bit. Virabhadrasana 2. Left hip is pushing the right hip forward, and you're trying to drive down through both legs evenly. Then straighten the front leg, hands to the hips. Turn those right toes in to face the side of the mat. And then from here, notice where your toes are. You want the heels in, toes out, just a little bit. Doesn't need to be too much. Bend the right knee, straighten the left. Hands still on the hips. It's a high skandasana. Chest is reaching forward. So that right leg is bent, left leg is straight. Come back to center. Toes point forward, come back up to standing, angle in the left toes, turn the right toes all the way out, bring the arms out wide, warrior two, flip that front palm, reverse warrior. And windmill the hands down to the mat, step back, downward facing dog. If you want a vinyasa, take one. If you'd rather just stay in downward facing dog, do that. Child's pose is also an option. Keep that in mind. Left leg reaches up and back. Step that left foot all the way through, up between the hands, feet hip width, crescent pose. Maybe a bend in the back knee for this first time on this side, and then play with the straighter back leg. Open it up, warrior two. Straighten the front leg, hands to the hips, left toes point in, and then with the feet, heels in, toes out a little bit. Bend the left knee, straighten the right, keep reaching the chest forward. Hips aren't going lower than that left knee. High Skandasana. Both feet flat on the ground. Back to center, turn those toes to point forward, reach the arms out wide, angle in the right toes, turn the left toes out, warrior two. Flip the front palm up, reverse warrior. Windmill the hands down to the mat, step back, downward facing dog, stay here, Vinyasa. Bend the knees, look forward, step, walk, hop, feet go up between the hands. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. Bend the knees, sit back, Utkatasana, chair pose. All the way up to standing, hands come together, down in front of the heart. Inhale, sit back, chair pose. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, bend the knees, hands to the mat, step back to plank pose. Any way you want, back to downward facing dog. Once you get to downward facing dog, walk the hands back toward the feet, back of the mat. Malasana yogi squat. Widen the feet as much as you need to. If you're feeling like you don't need to widen the feet and turn the toes out, traditionally a squat is done with the toes pointing forward and the feet pretty narrow. So you could play with that, but don't feel like you have to. Just throwing it out there in case your squats are feeling really good and you want to adjust the feet in a different way. Chest is lifted. See how this one feels. So second squat, but you've also done other hip opening since the last one with those standing poses. Hands come back down to the mat, straighten the legs, heel toe the feet back to hip width distance. Inhale up halfway, Ardha Uttanasana. Walk the hands forward, back to your downward facing dog, trying to keep those heels as close as you can to the mat, if not touching. Right leg reaches up and back, three-legged down dog. Step that right foot all the way through, up between the hands. This time, warrior one. Hop the back foot in, reach the arms forward and all the way up. That inner left thigh spins back behind you, right inner thigh goes straight forward. Open it up, warrior two. Straighten the front leg, hands to the hips, turn those right toes in. This time, heels in, toes out. Bend the right knee, straighten the left leg. If you want to come down lower, you can. You can stay right here where we've been playing, or maybe the hands and the hips come down. Maybe those left toes point up. Right knee and toes, always in the same direction. Hands can stay down or they can come together in front of the heart. And it's like you're sliding that left heel in toward the body. Hands come down. If you're down low, come back to standing. We'll all turn the toes to point forward. If you're down low, bend the knees, hands to the hips. Now you're back up to standing. Angle in the left toes, turn the right toes all the way out. Warrior two. Flip the front palm up, reverse warrior. This time straighten the front leg. Reverse triangle. Put that bend in the right knee back to reverse warrior just to exit. Windmill the hands down to the mat. Any way you want, back to downward facing dog. Left leg reaches up and back. Step that left foot all the way through, setting up for warrior one. Hop the back foot in, reach the arms forward and up. Stay even in both legs, even here, pressing down into both feet evenly. Open it up, warrior two. So some of you will lengthen your stance a little bit. Warrior one does have a shorter stance than warrior two. Straighten that front leg, hands to the hips, turn the left toes in, then heels in, toes out. We bend the left knee, straighten the right leg. Maybe you stay here, maybe the hips come down and the right toes come up. Maybe the hands come together in front of the heart. Just don't push away with that right foot. It's like you're trying to drag it in isometrically without moving it. Hands down if they're up, shift back so that the toes point forward, legs are straight, little bend in the knees, hands to the hips, press yourself up to standing, angle in the right toes, turn the left toes out, Virabhadrasana 2. And you're pushing the top of that right thigh back. We want that back leg to be straight. Flip the front palm, reverse warrior. Once you get the upper body set up, straighten the front leg as you reach up and away, reverse triangle. Then send that left knee straight forward, reverse warrior. Windmill the hands down to the mat. Start making your way back to downward facing dog. Bend the knees, look forward, bring the feet up to the hands. Inhaling up halfway. Exhale, fold. Chair pose. Weight into the heels of the feet, arms reach up. Come all the way up to standing, hands come together, down in front of the heart. Bend the knees, sit back, chair pose. So feet are hip width distance unless you're doing traditional with the big toes together, slight gap in the heels. Look down, make sure you can see all 10 toes. Maybe you start to lower the hips, keeping the chest lifted, coming into a deeper chair or even a deeper yogi squat. And then exhale, forward fold, straighten the legs, just kind of thinking about that. Inhale up halfway. Hands down to the mat, step back to downward facing dog or plank pose, flowing through a vinyasa. Once you get to downward facing dog, take a big inhale in through the nose. Flutter the lips, horse's breath on the exhale. Start to walk the hands back toward the feet at the back of the mat. Yogi squat. So wherever you want the feet, just keep the knees and the toes going in the same direction. Hands come together in front of the heart if the heels are down on the mat. And if the hands are together in front of the heart, we'll add on from here. If you have the hands down on the mat, you just stay right there. Left arm comes down to the floor. Right arm reaches up. Try to keep that right knee still in line with the right toes. It wants to cave in. And then switching sides. So first come back to Malasana, find your center, then bring the right arm down and the left arm up. Hands back together, Malasana, keeping the chest lifted, then hands down to the mat, straighten the legs, heel toe the feet back to hip width distance if you went wider. Inhale up halfway, Ardha Uttanasana, hugging the belly in. Walk the hands forward, back to downward facing dog. Keep reaching the heels down toward the mat. Right leg reaches up and back. This time, right knee, right tricep. Bring it up high. Back to three-legged down dog. Right foot steps up between the hands. Warrior one. Hop the back foot in. Reach the arms forward and up. Warrior two. Straighten the front leg, hands to the hips, turn those right toes in, then heels in, toes out, not as wide as you can go, bending the right knee, straightening the left leg, deeper if you want for Skandasana. Knees and toes in the same direction. Hands come down to the mat, straighten the legs, turning the toes to point forward, bend the knees, hands to the hips, press up to standing. Angle in the left toes, turn the right toes out, warrior two. Lifting that lower belly and lengthening the tail. So it shouldn't feel like you're sticking your bum out behind you. Then flip the front palm, reverse warrior. Straighten the front leg, keep reaching up and back. Let's take this to triangle. So come up to standing. You can shorten the stance a little bit. Reach that right arm forward, hip shift back, right arm down, left arm up, Trikonasana. And we'll add a bind here, a half bind. So turn the left palm to face behind you, wrap the left arm behind the back. Opening up that left side chest and shoulder. Lengthening the spine still. Maybe you start to float that right arm forward so the palm faces up. Reverse warrior. Maybe keeping the half bind. You don't have to. And windmilling the hands down to the mat, downward facing dog with or without a vinyasa. Left leg reaches up and back, three-legged down dog. Left knee, left tricep, up high. Chest reaches forward. Bring it back to three-legged down dog. This time, left foot up between the hands. Hop the back foot in, Virabhadrasana 1. Open it up, warrior 2. Straighten the front leg, hands to the hips, left toes turn in to face the side of the mat, heels in, toes out slightly, bend the left knee, straighten the right leg, wherever you want to take Skandasana. If you're all the way in, left elbow inside the left knee. Hands come down to the mat, shift back so that the toes point forward, legs are straight, then bend the knees, hands to the hips, press yourself up to standing, angle in the right toes, turn the left toes all the way out, back to warrior 2. Flip the front palm up, reverse warrior, straighten the front leg, keep reaching up and back. Then bring yourself up to standing, setting up for triangle pose. Hips pull back as you reach that left arm forward, then bring that down, right arm up. Turn that right palm to face behind you. Wrap the right arm behind the back. Left arm, maybe it floats forward, palm faces up, still rotating the chest up, squeezing those legs together. Keep the half bind if you want to, reverse warrior. Send that left knee straight forward, left arm reaches up and back. You're trying not to let that left knee cave in. So see if you can locate where it's pointing, get it over the second and third toe, back thigh still pressing back to keep the back leg straight. Windmill the hands down to the mat, make your way back, downward facing dog. Few breaths in down dog. Making sure you can't see the heels. They're hiding behind the balls of the feet. So it's like they're kicking out a little bit. And that'll help you broaden the backs of the thighs. Bend the knees, look forward, bring the feet up to the hands. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. Utkatasana chair pose. All the way up to standing, hands come together, down in front of the heart. Inhale, sit back, chair pose. Looking down at the feet, keeping the chest lifted. Just make sure you can see all 10 toes. And then you can play with lowering the hips as much as you want to, not letting the knees go forward. Chest is lifted whenever you find your place. And exhale, forward fold, straighten the legs, let the head and the neck go. Inhale up halfway, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, fold, place the hands on the mat, make your way back, downward facing dog. Once you get to downward facing dog, take a deep breath in through the nose. On the exhale, lion's breath. Stick out the tongue toward the chin, bulge the eyes. Walk the hands back toward the feet at the back of the mat. Malasana yogi squat. So find where it is. It's kind of nice when you get into these poses and your feet will tell you where you need to be to get the best hip opening and alignment of the whole thing. Left arm comes down, right arm reaches up. You could turn that right palm to face behind you and wrap the right arm behind the back. You could also lower that left shoulder, wrap the left arm around that leg and see if the hands connect. Just try not to let that right knee cave in. Left hand comes down, right arm reaches up, back to Malasana, facing forward. And you can skip this whole thing if it doesn't work for you. Right hand comes down, left arm reaches up. Maybe you stay here or turn that left palm, wrap that left arm behind the back. Maybe you lower the shoulder a little bit so that knee is above the underarm, and then open up the knees, open up the chest, maybe a full bind. Right hand comes down, left arm reaches up, back to Malasana, squared forward. Hands to the mat, straighten the legs, heel toe the feet back to hip width distance. Inhale up halfway, Ardha Uttanasana, belly hugs in, chest reaches forward. Then start to walk the hands forward, keeping the heels on the mat as long as you can, coming into your downward facing dog. And maybe they actually stay there. They don't have to, but maybe they're just closer. Right leg reaches up and back, right knee, right tricep, bring it up high, stacking the shoulders over the wrist. Back to three-legged down dog. Right foot steps up between the hands, warrior one. Hop that back foot in, reach the arms forward all the way up. Last time through this flow. Open it up, Warrior two. Straighten the front leg, hands to the hips, turn those right toes in, keep the hands on the hips, heels in, toes out, bend the right knee, straighten the left, maybe a deeper skandasana, bringing the hips down, left toes up, maybe the hands come together. Hands down to the mat, straighten the legs, toes point forward, bend in the knees, hands to the hips, press up to standing. Angle in the left toes, turn the right toes out. Back to Virabhadrasana 2. Flip the front palm up, reverse warrior. Straighten the front leg, reverse triangle. Then come up to standing triangle, shortening the stance if you want to. Left palm turns to face behind you. Wrap the left arm behind the back. Squeeze those legs together, belly in, keep opening up across the chest. Lightly float that right arm forward, palm up. Reverse warrior. Bending that front knee, reaching up and back. And exit. Hands come down to the mat. Make your way back, downward facing dog. Last side, left leg reaches up and back. Left knee, left tricep. Three-legged down dog. Left foot steps up between the hands, warrior two. Oh, sorry, warrior one. Forward facing warrior. Open it up, warrior two. Hands to the hips, straighten that front leg, turn the left toes to point toward the side of the mat, heels in, toes out, keeping the chest lifted, bend the left knee, straighten the right, take skandasana wherever you want it to be. Maybe not wherever you want it to be, but where your body wants it to be. There's a big difference, right? Hands come down to the floor in front of you. If they're lifted, straighten the legs, turning the toes forward, then bend the knees, hands to the hips, press yourself up to standing, angle in those right toes, left toes turn out, back to warrior two. Flip the front palm, reverse warrior, and then straighten that front leg, reverse triangle. Come back up to standing. You can heel toe the back foot in a little bit. Trikonasana triangle pose. Right palm turns to face behind you. Wrap the right arm behind the back. Squeeze those legs together. Hug the core in, chest opening. Get light in that left hand. Reach that left arm forward, palm up. Reverse warrior. And windmill the hands down to the mat, making your way back, downward facing dog. Last vinyasa if you want it. Another deep breath in downward facing dog. And then from here, step the right foot up between the hands. Walk the hands over to the left, turning the toes to the side of the mat. Put a little bend in the knees, hands come up to the hips, and you're coming back up to standing. Angle in the left toes, turn the right toes all the way out. So we don't want our longest stance. We're coming back into triangle pose. Arms reach out wide. You could heel toe the back foot in a little bit. Shift that left hip back, right arm forward, bring the right arm down, left arm up. Trikonasana. Then slowly start to come back up to standing. Take your time. Keep the arms out wide. Keep the arms out wide. Just turn those right toes in so they're facing forward. Hands come to the hips. Fold forward halfway. Then bring the hands down in front of you on the floor or the mat. Left hand right in front of the face. So it's a little bit more forward in front of you. Right arm reaches up for a twist. Try not to take that left hip with you. If you want to add a half bind, we've been playing with that. You can turn the right hand to face behind you and wrap the right arm behind the back. But try not to take the left hip. You want to keep the hips square. Right arm reaches back up. Bring that right hand back down to the mat. Turn the toes to the top of the mat like you're in a runner's lunge. Step back, downward facing dog, just going straight there. Feet hip width distance apart. And then left foot steps up between the hands. Turn the toes to face the right side of the mat. Hands walk over to the right. Put a bend in the knees, hands to the hips, press yourself up to standing, angle in those right toes, turn the left toes out, maybe shortening your stance if it's a long one, arms out wide, last triangle, hip shift back, left arm down, right arm up. So feeling how long the legs are, the arms are, the spine, and keeping that into this next shape. So squeeze the legs together, hug the belly, and come right back up to standing, arms out wide. Left toes come in, hands to the hips, fold forward halfway, hands come down in front of the shoulders. And then place that right hand right in front of the face. Toes are pointing forward, maybe even a little bit in. Left arm reaches up, you're twisting toward the top of the mat again. So get your setup here with the body. Try not to take that right hip with you. Once you have the hips square, turn that left palm to face behind you and do the half bind if you did it on the first side. Lengthening the spine. So crown of the head's reaching forward away from the hips. Left arm reaches back up again. Left hand down in front of the face. Turn the toes to the top of the mat, finding a lunge. Step back, downward facing dog. One more inhale in through the nose. Out through the mouth, side out. Child's pose. Bring the knees down to the mat, big toes together, forehead down. Maybe the arms go back behind you if you want to break on the shoulders. Hands come down to the mat, shifting back to hands and knees, toes point straight back behind you. Walk the hands forward, way ahead of the shoulders. Shift forward, keeping the knees down so the shoulders stack over the wrists, and lie down onto your stomach. Tops of the feet press down into the mat. Reach the arms back behind you, palms face one another like you're squeezing a beach ball between the hands. Press into the tops of the feet, lift and spread the chest, tailbone back, Shalabhasana locust pose. If you want to hover the feet, you can, just don't go for height, go for length. And release. You can make a pillow with the hands. You can keep the arm and rest the head straight down onto the hands, or you can turn the head to one side, arms down by the sides. So whichever one feels like it'd be more relaxing. Feeling that heartbeat against the mat. We'll come right back in. So tops of the feet press down, arms reach back behind you, squeeze those hands together to keep the arms active. And it's like someone's pulling your wrists and your ankles back as you reach the chest forward. Maybe you hover the feet. Inner thighs are engaged. If you had a block between the thighs, it'd be spinning up toward the sky. and release. If you're turning the head side to side, turn it the other way if the neck will allow, or if you're keeping it symmetrical, just forehead comes down to the hands. Trying to calm the heartbeat with the breath. All right, last one. Tops of the feet press down. You hug those outer ankles in. Stretch the arms back behind you, squeezing the hands together. Lift and spread the chest. Maybe hover the feet. It's all those tiny back muscles that are doing the work here as you stretch the front side of the body. Seems like you're not doing that much, but you're feeling that heat as you keep that lift happening and the breath going at the same time. One more inhale and exhale, let it go. Rest. Done with those. You can lift the feet and move the feet side to side like windshield wipers if that doesn't bother your lower back. If it does, then skip it. Just keep the feet down. Most people like this, but if it bothers you, it's not worth it. Feet come back down to the mat. Come up like you're coming into Sphinx pose. It's just a transition. You'll bring this left hand in so it goes behind the right arm. Stretch that left arm forward, palm facing up. Right knee comes forward out to the side, inner edge of the foot down on the ground. And then reach this right arm up to the sky and then roll back, coming into your spinal twist. Once you get there, you want to feel like the head, left hip, left foot are in line. Such a nice way to come into a twist after the Shalabhasana, those back bends on our stomach. Definitely the easiest way to get into the twist. So you don't have to come back up to seated. Maybe the gaze falls over the right arm. And right arm comes back over to the left side. Bring that right leg back behind you. Find a gentle Sphinx pose, just lifting the chest up enough so you can bring that right forearm in behind the left. Reach that right arm forward, turn the palm to face up, and then you'll start to open or bring this left knee outside of the hip, inner edge of the foot down on the ground. Left arm reaches up and back, and you just start to open up across the chest. Head, right hip, right foot in one line as best as you can. Doesn't have to be perfect. Maybe the gaze goes over the left arm. Left arm starts to come all the way back over to the right. Left leg goes back behind you, forearms to the mat like Sphinx pose, just so you can come up to hands and knees. So once you get to hands and knees, tabletop, don't follow me. I'm just trying to get the mic back on. You'll turn to face the side of the mat. Doesn't matter which side, just one that you can still see the screen. If you're on a hard surface like me, you'll definitely want to fold the outer edges of the mat in. If you're on carpet, you'll probably be fine. You can just leave the mat where it is. And then bring the knees out a little wider. If you're on a harder surface, you definitely want to be on that double up part of the mat. Turn the toes out so the inner edge of the foot is down on the ground. Hands are still right underneath the shoulders. And here's where you'll start to widen the knees. Coming into frog pose, our hip opener to close our practice. Maybe some of you are comfortable bringing the forearms down, but if you'd rather have hands stay up higher, that's fine. Inner edges of the feet are down on the ground, toes turned out, getting a deep hip opening and inner thigh opening. Chest is reaching forward. One other thing I'll say is this is one of those poses, well, probably just like all the others, that the body's constantly trying to make easier. So the hardest variation of the pose is if the hips are right in line with the knees. It's easier if you shift the hips forward or back. So your body might be naturally doing that. Ideally, you're trying to find center. But also knowing that if you go forward or back, that'll take away some of the strain in the pose. So if you need to do that, do that. And some people can lie down flat on their stomach and have the knees all the way out. If that's you, don't let me hold you back. I hardly ever see it in person, if that makes anybody. I think I've maybe seen one person do it in my entire life. Okay, so you'll start to come back up onto the hands. You'll need to bring the knees in, inching them in a little bit at a time until you come back to hands and knees. If the mat's rolled up, unroll it, and then you'll come to seated facing forward, legs out in front of you. Let's do a quick windshield wipers. Bring the hands back behind you, feet wide to the outer edges of the mat, and now you can let the knees go side to side like windshield wipers. This will feel good. And then finish the side that you're on, and we'll come back to seated with the legs out in front of you. Paschimottanasana, seated forward fold. Reach the arms all the way up and fold over the legs. Take your time coming in, close the eyes, let the head and the neck go. Make sure the hands are resting down on something. I see this often where people just stay reaching with the arms forward, and you want to keep the hands down. You can still keep reaching the spine forward, but not the hands. The other thing with doing that is your shoulders tend to go with you, and you want to keep those in place so they're not reaching forward toward the toes. And come all the way back up to seated. Walk the feet in, come down onto your back for Shavasana. If you'd like to do a seated meditation, you're also welcome to stay up. If you're on your back, let the legs go forward. Kick anything out of the way that might be around you that you're touching. You really only want to touch the mat, the floor, and that's it. If you have something to cover your eyes, grab it. Take one more inhale. Exhale, Shavasana. Body goes back to breathing on its own. Maybe noticing the difference in the way your body's breathing now compared to when you first started. You'll start to wiggle the fingers and the toes. Find a stretch, reach the arms overhead. Hug the knees in toward the chest. You can rock side to side a little bit if that feels good in your body. And you can either roll over to one side to come up, or you could rock yourself up, grabbing onto the backs of the thighs. We're all coming to our meditation seat, sitting up tall, chest lifted, eyes closed. Bringing the hands together in front of you. Slight bow of the head, taking a moment to yourself to honor and acknowledge your heart and spirit, as well as everyone around you. Bring the head back up, blink open the eyes. Namaste. Another big hip opening practice. Hope that feels good in your body, and I'll see you next time.